Hey everybody, it's GauntletX, and welcome back to some more Magic Arena, and today we're going to be playing another premiere draft of Theros Beyond Death. Without further ado, let's get into the draft. For our Pack 1 Pick 1, we have a pretty fun build around Mythic. It's actually not the scariest, most explosive rare of all time, because you do have to build around it a good amount, but it is still quite strong. It's not like Dream Trawler level or anything, but with the +1, you can keep drawing cards if you're running enough enchantments. With the -3, you turn any one of your enchantments into an Oblivion Ring, basically, exiling an opposing threat until your opponent deals with your enchantment. And then the -7 is an ultimate in an enchantment-heavy deck, so this is not the hardest build around in this format. Green-White's already going to want to play tons of enchantments, so it is definitely the strongest card in the pack and easily worth taking the multicolored spell starting off the draft. For pick number 2, we have a couple pretty great options. I think Chainweb Arachneer is the better card out of these two in a vacuum, where this can keep escaping from the graveyard later as a big 4/5 reach, and if you happen to be against flyers, it's super good shooting an opposing creature when it hits the board. But Nyx Herald is also pretty good for its mana cost, and it plays very well. With our Calyx, we're wanting a majority of our deck to be enchantments, so that we basically never miss on that +1 ability. So starting with the solid enchantment creature over the non-enchantment creature seems like the place to be. Pick number 3, green and white are already gone. It's completely dry. Flicker of Fate is pretty narrow. It's a borderline playable, and there's no green cards, so that's an issue here. If we're super heavily contested, maybe we don't get to do Calyx stuff, and then we're pretty sad, so we just take the most flexible off-color card here, so whatever else we end up doing, we might be able to find a playable out of the pack. And that's either Mire Triton, because basically every black deck has some amount of graveyard synergy for this card to play well with, the escape mechanic being the primary one, or the Omen of the Forge, just cheap removal. There's a lot of pretty beefy creatures in the format, so I'm not the biggest fan of small red burn spells, like 2-damage ones like this, so I think I'll go for the Mire Triton here. But that was a pretty big miss. Pick 3, and there's already nothing for the green-white enchantments deck. Yeah, and we might just be completely cut off of it. Maybe somebody a few packs to the right also opened up Calyx, because Sentinel's Eyes is the closest to playable, and it's pretty filler. I guess the rest of this pack isn't particularly good, right? There's a really mediocre blue removal spell, a pretty mediocre red removal spell, a card draw engine for a power 4 or greater, like green-red deck. That's it, though? There's like 3 other playables? Everything else is pretty bad filler? Okay. I mean, I guess Sentinel's Eyes is actually one of the best cards out of that pack, weirdly. Okay, now Heliod's Pilgrim is definitely one of the best out of this pack. Heliod's Pilgrim is excellent because basically every color in this format has some amount of aura-based removal. And if we're in green-white specifically, we'll also have aggressive auras like Sentinel's Eyes to put on our own cards, so the flexibility rises a bit here in this color pair. If I didn't have a Calyx in the deck right now, we might go for Final Death as well. That's great removal in a format that has the escape mechanic and graveyard synergies. Being able to exile is the big thing there. Also, Kunaros is pretty scary. Just 3 mana, 3/3 Vigilance, Menace, Lifelink. Pretty absurd. That's already quite the stat line. It shuts off the escape mechanic as well, which matters sometimes, but I'd rather stick to our Calyx than start moving on to a Kunaros here, if we can. And here's another good enchantment creature with the Grove Dancer. It's one of the best cards in this pack. I think the top 3 are probably Grove Dancer, the Aspect as a discard spell, and the Witness of Tomorrows. Although Gallia's interesting. Not really good interesting, but interesting. Okay, pick 7. Pious Wayfarer looks good for a deck that's going to have almost all enchantments. We're going to try to be pretty aggressive as well, probably. Curve into the Calyx. But black-white looks like probably the open color pair in this draft pod. If we wanted to draft what's open instead of drafting towards our incredible bomb, then we would be probably taking Kunaros and going white-black and never looking back. But let's go for Calyx stuff. We already did white-black stuff in an earlier draft this week. Now Nylia's Forerunner at the top end, give the whole board trample, and it's another enchantment creature. There's that Flicker of Fate. There's also the Skirmisher. Really don't like 1 toughness creatures. There's a lot of ways to deal with them. There's the 3 mana instant that makes 2 1/1s. There's the 1 mana black removal spell that can keep escaping that keeps killing 1/1s. Or 1 toughness creatures. I'm just going to take Flicker over that. But Flicker's pretty narrow. There's no world in which I'm playing Rumbling Sentry. I'll take just best off-color card. Actually, Deny the Divine was probably better than the 5/4 by a little bit. I'll take that this time. Bunch of nothing here as we move towards pack number 2. So, the way this draft has looked, we're probably not getting anything passed to us super great in pack 3. Because I think the players on our right are taking good green and white, but pack 2, we might get loaded up. Because we passed like nothing in green-white. So unless they have a huge reason to be in the color pair like Calyx, they probably won't be there by now. So pack 2, pick 1, we get Warbriar Blessings, so we get an aura-based removal spell to pull out with Heliod's Pilgrim. Absolutely take that. The fixing in this format is really bad. I wouldn't really recommend splashing almost ever. So even though the Akroan War is a pretty strong rare, we are on Selesnya here, so we take the Warbriar Blessing. What do we get past here? Dreadful Apathy for another aura-based removal spell, or Pious Wayfarer for aggro. Those are the best cards on color. Best card period is probably the Lamphead. Super efficient sack ability, but it is Apathy for us. Some fine filler enchantment creatures out of this pack, so I guess we grab the Evangel here. It's gonna be pretty good with like Sentinel's Eyes if we get enough cheap, like 1 and 2 mana creatures. We need a lot of 1 or 2 mana creatures for this card though, but the alternative if we want an enchantment is just a 2/4. It's slightly higher toughness, but it has literally no abilities, so Evangel's got to be better than that at the very least. Maybe we're supposed to just take the 2 mana 3/1 because the Evangel's so narrow, but again, I want almost all enchantments here, so I'm grabbing the Evangel. Okay, here's a really good 2-drop, Nessian Hornbeetle. We have to have a power 4 or greater creature on board, but if we do, this gets a +1/+1 counter every single turn. I think the Voracious Titan's another exceptional creature. These creatures are so good, we'll take a non-enchantment creature out of this pack. Not that we have a choice. None of the other cards are enchantments anyway, but I'm going to grab the Hornbeetle here over the Typhon. Now we get a Transcendent Envoy for another great enchantment creature. This makes our Warbriar Blessing, our Apathy cheaper. And it just gives us a 2-drop enchantment creature on curve, which plays well with the Evangel. Chimera's good. The escape mechanic grinds out those long games. But we are all in enchantments here. Okay, I'll take Typhon. Typhon is like the best calm and escape creature. Comes back as a 7/7, potentially repeatedly, which is absurd. The Chimeras come back as 5/2s. They come back with only 3 cards getting exiled, but a 5/2 does trade into almost anything on your opponent's board. So I'll take the Typhon here. Although Karametra's Blessing looks powerful in this deck. +2/+2 hexproof indestructible almost all the time, because we're almost all enchantment creatures. Alright, filler removal probably gets cut when we have Apathy, Blessing, and Calyx already. If we don't quite have enough playables, we can play the filler creature and the filler removal spell in the end. Well, I'm also running these 2 that are pretty filler that I don't want to. I've got the Flicker combo, which is a cute combo to mention. If you have Dreadful Apathy and Flicker of Fate, you can then spend 3 mana to put the Dreadful Apathy's ability on the stack, and then respond by Flicker Fating your own Dreadful Apathy. So the creature is going to get exiled, but your Apathy gets to go onto another creature. So you turn Flicker of Fate into basically another copy of Apathy, but at that point you could just run another copy of Apathy. I'm going to take Karametra's Blessing over Hero of the Pride. I feel like that looks really good for this deck, but maybe that's wrong because maybe it's easier to get past the Blessings than the 2-drops. Speaking of 2-drops, I'm going to take the Leonin over another Sentinel's Eyes, probably. Just really want to make sure I've got stuff engraved for the Evangel. Although Sentinel's Eyes does seem kind of sweet here. Already got the 1 copy and I have a tutor towards it. I'm going to take the Leonin. Another Wayfarer. 3-drop. Triumphant Surge for filler. And let's see what we get in pack number 3. We've got Fixing. We've got another Tutor. We've got a chunky little life gainer. I think we go for the Tutor. I think I go Pilgrim over Daxos by just a tiny bit, but those are the big, really nice options here. I'm going to go for the Tutor. Idyllic Tutor is interesting because it can pull out enchantment creatures as well instead of just auras, but the fact that Pilgrim comes with a body is kind of a big deal. So I think Pilgrim's just better than Tutor. Better than the actual factual Tutor. This deck looks pretty nice. It's very, very focused on the green-white enchantment theme here. So it's definitely doing what it wants to do. Super synergy driven. I'm pretty into it. We want another 2-drop here again with the Evangel. Now we have double Pilgrim to grab the Sentinel's Eyes, so it's almost like we have 3 copies of Sentinel's Eyes. So anytime we have the Evangel, if we have a Pilgrim, we're going to grab Sentinel's Eyes, or if we've top decked a Sentinel's Eyes, then that is the really good combo for the Evangel. Because since the Sentinel's Eyes has such a cheap escape ability, only needing to exile 2 cards from your grave, it's one of the best auras for just constantly having an aura on the board. So I like that a lot. What's our creature count here? We're on 14. I do want a few more creatures. But Indomitable Will's kind of interesting with the Evangel. I also have some filler creatures I want to cut, like the Nyxborn Courser, just because that's kind of hard to cast. So I'll take the Leonin over the Indomitable Will. And over the Tower Scout because of the Evangel. But those are the options there. Okay, I'll take Cetessan Training, I think, to up the aura count over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7th 2-drop at this point. Yeah, we'll take Cetessan Training. Let's up that aura count. And this lets the Pilgrims tutor up Trample, or tutor up a Cantrip, just to draw a card spell. So that adds to their flexibility as well, which is pretty nice. Also, Cetessan Training only costs 1 mana if we have Transcendent Envoy on board. Plus, it's another offensive aura that we can put onto one of our non-enchantment creatures to get Nyx Herald to be able to buff them, or to get Karametra's Blessing to be able to give them Hexproof Indestructible. So making our few non-enchantment creatures join the enchantment party as well. I don't think there's a lot of good synergy for the Cetessan Training. And I'm pretty happy with how these last couple packs have worked. The first one has looked, like pack 1 looked pretty awkward, but these last couple packs, pack 2 and pack 3, like we've seen plenty of just solid green-white stuff, so. I guess we bullied people out of the color pair, and now we're not super contested. We've got decent devotion to white here. I feel like this deck could use infinite copies of Heliod's Pilgrim, though, but Hoplite will probably be like 4 1/1s on average, which is pretty big. Hoplite is very good when you're super deep on white, but we're kind of 50-50 here. We don't have any double white cards as well, because we don't really want to run Nyxborn Courser just to up our devotion. Get another 4-drop on the curve. Get a Revoke Existence I will not be playing. I already have a Nyxborn Course from the side, though. No reason to throw another one on the side. Captivating Unicorn might be okay. I really don't think we even play Idyllic Tutor. We just have triple Pilgrim anyway, that are actually putting stuff on the board and grabbing auras, which a lot of our enchantments are already. Just gonna rare draft this. We're not playing the Crawworm, the 6 mana, 6/7, no text. Might play the Tower Scout. Probably not. I think these two are like the cuts, right? What is our creature count? 18? I cut these two, it'll be 16. Ooh, a Leonin? Okay, I'm gonna play that over these for sure. Put a lean in, play 16 lands. Oh my god, last pick, Karametra's Blessing? Blessing is actually kind of ridiculous in this deck. It's like a... I guess it's not quite as good as Snakeskin Veil, because it doesn't give a permanent +1/+1 counter, but +2/+2 till end of turn, hexproof and indestructible is kind of wild. I think this is really good in this deck. So, run a bit of a lower creature count here. Let's just go all out, like, how low can you go kind of deck? Of just like drop a 4 or a 5 drop in a land here. Just go nice and quick, low to the ground. Pretty into it. The Evangel really being a big part of what leads us there, so that we have as many of these 1 and 2 mana creatures for that as possible. I feel like most of our creatures are small enough. Trample to the whole board might not matter that much. We just go for a 4 drop here and, you know, throw Vigilance on a flyer at the top end or something. Seems fine. Although, again, upping that enchantment count for Calyx is kind of big. It's at 11 right now. I'd drop it down to 10, which is literally 1 out of 4 cards for the +1. And you want it to be like 10 minimum, because you really don't want to miss. And if you have 10 out of your 40 cards being enchantments, that means 1 out of 4 on average you'll hit, but you will sometimes miss. We're actually a little bit low on enchantments here in the end, surprisingly enough. We'd like 12 or more to be super, super happy, but I don't think it's worth running Nyxborn Courser just because that's an enchantment. But it is probably worth like cutting a Pegasus or one of these blessings over the Forerunner at the very least. I think I'll just cut the Pegasus. We'll just go entirely on the ground, because again, I think this thing's kind of absurd if you're getting the full value hexproof plus indestructible off just 1 mana. So yeah, we'll keep that in here and we'll call it a deck there. All right, here's a look at our final deck list for today. We're going really aggressive with this one. Lots of cheap creatures with like 3 power for 2 drops. These Wayfarers can provide a ton of extra damage off of just a 1-drop creature, and just a really low curve as well in terms of the average mana value of our spells. And then with these cheap creatures, we can leverage combat tricks to keep the pressure on our opponents, as well as some removal spells to clear a path and just break that damage through. So super aggressive deck here, but it also does have some pretty good value plays, as well as bombs for the late game. With Heliod's Pilgrim, we can tutor for whatever kind of aura we need. We have 2 different aggressive or offensive auras between Sentinel's Eyes and Setessan Training, and 3 different removal spell auras between the Apathies and the Warbriar Blessings. So nice little flexible potential 2-for-1 there. The Dawn of Angel can potentially 2-for-1 our opponents when we are playing our Sentinel's Eyes and our Setessan Trainings. Then if any of our creatures are dying, we're bringing back some of our other cheap creatures. And our biggest value engine is our Bomb Rare, Calyx Destiny's Hand, that can draw us another enchantment every turn, or we can use it as potentially multiple removal spells with the -3 ability. So super nice, super streamlined deck here. Very excited to see how it does as we head into the gameplay. Here we are on the play for game number 1. We have a single creature, a combat trick, and a removal spell. This hand could flood out pretty bad, but it has both of our colors and 2 really nice spells. This is a risky keep for an aggressive deck. Maybe supposed to take the mulligan towards more action, but I'm going to keep it here. Like, we know we can cast everything in the hand, which is a pretty big start, honestly. And there we go. Now we've got a curve alongside that Herald. Our opponent has the perfect little roadblock for our 1-drop, though. Slightly sad. Unless they send it in, then I can crack back and we're cool. Okay, we're cool, right? If not, we can Blessing. We're cool. Opponent hit us for 1 and gained 1 to let us hit them for 3. I think we'll take that. It's a favorable trade for us. It is the green-white mirror match immediately, and they have main deck Return to Nature, so that's going to be rough for the mirror match. Return to Nature, super main deckable. Artifact enchantment removal is main deckable in this format because of the amount of enchantments flying around. Not being able to hold up Karametra's Blessing here is kind of sad if I want to play the Wayfarer, but feel like playing the Wayfarer is still absolutely worth it. To get the extra damage here, because then we get to make sure Leonin has enough toughness to attack into the Alseid, which is a pretty big deal. Could have Blessinged away the Alseid as well, since if I try to Blessing anything else and they have a mana up, they can give it protection. Which also blanks my attacks for the turn. If they give protection from green, then I don't get to attack with any green creatures, or they'll just bounce off whatever has protection. If they give it protection from white, then don't get to attack with any white creatures. Alright. There are a few decks in this format. We ran against one last time with our blue-white control deck where we had Heliod's Intervention. There's a few decks, a few archetypes in the format that don't have any artifacts or enchantments, so I generally wouldn't main deck more than like 2 pieces of enchantment removal. But our opponent has at least 2 at this point. And we're going to kill the Alseid and just keep making sure our creatures are at least 2 power, right? Could cash in one of these to hit them a little harder, but I like having them as the hexproof indestructible trick against a removal spell as well. Nessian Boar. Alright, we just killed him, right? Well, it depends on if we hit a plains. If we don't hit a plains, they're not dead. Okay, yeah, they're only dead if they block wrong here. Which is rough. If we just top deck plains, they're just dead on board. Put them to 1. Or I can put them to 3 and kill the Envoy. If I put them to 3, anything getting in kills them off of Blessing next turn. It is just, oh, it is such a shame we didn't have one more plains here. I feel like them being at 1 and them being at 3 is basically the same thing here. So I'm going to keep 2 creatures on board with them at 3, since we have the Blessing in hand. And I was basically forced into the all attack there, because if I didn't attack with everybody, I would just have to block with everybody and lose all but 1 creature to the boar anyway. Mill, wee! Yeah, get that forest out of here. Fashionably late. I don't send in with the team, I lose it all to the boar, but I draw cards when I do at least, I guess. What are our outs, realistically? If I send for damage. If I send for damage, I Blessing up whatever the Unicorn blocks. Well, we hope that the Unicorn blocks the Grove Dancer, then I could bless that. I get to keep a Grove Dancer, but then I have 1 Grove Dancer versus 1 boar, and I still never get in again. I could top deck fire or something. I feel like I sadly have to play the long game now, because this plains was just a turn too late. Like we have to Draw 3, lose our board. If they have any interaction to stop the Karametra's Blessing, that's horrific. So we probably just let it happen, right? Because on board, we're going to kill the boar. We just don't have any creatures left. So unless they do something to win this fight, we won't do something. Okay, Heliod's Pilgrim's a big one. Double Pilgrim is funny. Okay, that doesn't give Indestructible because it's not enchanted, so our blessing should be enough to still kill the boar. And our Grove Dancer sticks around no matter what. Beautiful. Exile the boar just in case. Okay, there's another unicorn, and we can Pilgrim into the Apathy for that to put them to 1. The alternatives here. Sentinel's Eyes doesn't do anything. Test and Training doesn't do anything. Yeah, it's got to be Apathy. Cool. They're at 1 facing 2 lethal threats, and we have Pilgrim for another Apathy. Well, there they go. That's 2 blockers and a removal spell, so 1 Apathy is not enough to kill them. Oh, they don't have a removal spell, though. They just have the +1/+2. Cool. Never been more happy to have an opponent not have drafted any Apathies. It's pretty lucky they didn't find them in the pod. Or Warbriar Blessing? Warbriar Blessing would have worked too. Oh. Top deck Apathy is actually pretty awkward. I guess we get to Pilgrim a Sentinel's Eyes out instead? That's not going to change any of this math, though. If a single creature connects, they're dead, so we just try to connect with a single creature. Oh, right, the unicorn gets to tap something. I see, alright. Oh, both the unicorns get to tap something. Cool. Let's grab the training so we draw another card. Do some digging here. So, 3 lethal threats now. They need another instant speed enchantment. Or that? That's why they didn't have an Apathy. They had just had one in hand. That explains that. So, all we can do right now is Trump attack, so we need to draw into something. That's that's something. Yeah. That's certainly something. Exile Typhon, put it underneath our Cetessan training, I guess, it doesn't matter. Hit for 1. There we go. That was a really, really close game. Like, we looked on lock for the victory early with our aggressive attacks, getting them down to 3 and everything, but we just didn't have the mana to cast both of our combat tricks early enough to where that boar came down, and it's like, so we chump attack or chump block, and really, really swapped the course of that game. So could have went anywhere there, but luckily we did start hitting some really good draws in the end game to keep that final bit of pressure on for the last few points of damage, and we are now 1-0 heading into game 2. All right, here we are for game 2. Let's just get this ball rolling. Slam down some 3/1s and start chipping in for 3 a turn. Playing against the black deck, that could actually be a pretty big issue, because they have a great common against 1 toughness creatures. That's Mogis' Favor. +2/-1, and they can keep recasting it from their graveyard as well. I think for that reason, I don't mind making this a 3/3 and getting this Lampet out of the way. Yeah. I mean, I guess if I top deck any land, I can Wayfarer plus Blessing in the same turn, which is kind of nasty. And the lean in for Lampet trade is already just fine on board, so they might not even take it. Okay, they do take the trade, but the trade is fine. We get that out of the way and out of their grave to stop any escape. If they take the trade, that means quite likely no Mogis' Favor in hand, because otherwise they would have way rather traded the Favor off. Maybe it would have been best to just not attack, I guess, because this turn would be considerably better with 2 Leonins. But now I can just fight this big Marauder out of here. No, it's probably better to Apathy, right? Because I think the way this stacks up, I can technically have Pious Wayfarer give the Leonin +1 before the Leonin fights. So it'll be 3 toughness, make it 4 toughness. Oh wait, 4 toughness still isn't big enough. Never mind. It's 100% Apathy then. If 4 toughness isn't big enough to win the fight, then it doesn't even matter if I can have Wayfarer's Constellation trigger before the Warbriar Blessings fight resolves. Okay. I would rather trade a 3-1 into the Marauder than a 4-4, so let's just offer the trade. Worst case scenario, we're putting them to 9. Best case scenario, we clear a path for Typhon now. Is this the exile removal? As long as it's not exile removal, I'm pretty cool with it. It's Mire's Grasp. That's it. Alright, there's Brine Giant, so get that out of the way for sure. Which means just Apathy. I don't get to cast anything else this turn. Yep. Alright. Just hit for 3. I'm surprised they did that. I guess I should have technically buffed the Leonin, but I was like 100% sure I was just going to trade into Marauder anyway. I was wrong. So I should have buffed Leonin. We would have hit for 1 more damage. There was literally no reason not to buff Leonin if I wasn't going to send in anything else. Been pretty loose. Missing out on some extra points of damage for fun. Doesn't look like it matters because the hand is like still has so much damage in it right now. It's wild. So we can bless the enemy away and Setessan Training in the same turn. Yeah, this is insane amounts of damage. And we want to fight the enemy, and we want to buff everything on the Leonin because we're going to give it Trample. So they have to block the Leonin and still go to 1. I think that's the right play. Maybe spread out. There's a way to find lethal. I don't actually know. I mean, we certainly could have found lethal by now because we could have hit them for 1 more damage last turn. Although maybe they would have traded last turn if we played it that way. Either way, Wayfarer's been ridiculous in this deck. I mean, it is an 11 enchantment deck, but still. Alright, that's it. They're tapped out and they're already dead on board. Poke them to 0. Move on to game 3. Here we are for game 3. Great curve. We are on the draw on this one. Ooh. Maybe I'm supposed to play Hornbeetle first instead of Grove Dancer. That does give them more time to kill the Hornbeetle, which I don't love. And I don't need the Hornbeetle on board until turn 4. So I can still play it turn 3 instead of casting Pilgrim. And that way I'm curving out with as big creatures as possible here. Plus giving them an opportunity to kill Grove Dancer with a Mire's Grasp instead of Hornbeetle. But they didn't want to Mire's Grasp on turn 3 because they had a 3-drop creature, so they got to keep the Grasp for the Hornbeetle, and we're sad. Alright. Hand still looks great. We've got a 4-4 into a 5-3 that's going to give the whole board Trample. Then we'll have the 6 mana, well, probably have the 6 mana to Pilgrim. Oh my god, they have nothing but creatures that can't block? Let's go. Feels pretty good. One thing that's slightly awkward here is that the Forerunner is not big enough to block any of the Underworld Chargers without dying, so they are going to slam in for maximum damage this turn. But we have 11 power on board and they can't block. They can get rid of one Pilgrim, but they play a blocker, we play the other one and clear out the blocker. And if they don't play a blocker, they sure are dead. Alright, well, the downside of Underworld Charger being massive that game. Our opponent had creatures, but they just couldn't block anything, and we are now 3-0 heading into game 4. Alright, here we are for game 4. We don't play a creature till turn 3 with this hand, so it's actually kind of slow, but it's got a very good amount of spells to lands. 3 lands towards these big spells. These are all great spells. Heliod's Pilgrim. I could play it slow and play around removal, going Pilgrim into Herald holding up Blessing, but you know, that might not be horrible, considering I can't play Typhon next turn anyway. So next turn it's still just going to be 3-drop hold up 1. But if they don't immediately have removal in hand, Herald is actually slamming in for 3 a turn, whereas Pilgrim's doing nothing. Agonizing Remorse? Right, that is not removal in hand. Guessing there goes Typhon, but I don't have the green for it anyway, so that's actually probably the best result for us, since there's no guarantee we can even do that. Okay. They know about the Karametra's Blessing, but that doesn't make it any less good. I think we still have to hold it up so they can't play any removal. Because now if I go like Pilgrim and Wayfarer this turn, they're just going to slam dunk removal on this Herald while they still can't, like when we're tapped out. So we're going to do everything we can to not be tapped out. So hold up the Blessing so Nyx Herald can never die. And grab probably an offensive aura here rather than removal. We already have Warbriar Blessing. Feeling Cetessan training. Sentinel's Eyes. Go for the Sentinel's Eyes. It's cheap enough to really easily go Wayfair plus Sentinel's Eyes holding up the Blessing, which is pretty big. I guess I could training and still hold up the Blessing, but Herald already has trample every time we target it. Yeah, so far it looks like if we just keep this Herald on board, it's gonna kill them. So let's just buff it up and keep it on board. Although there's an alternative where we Vigilance the Pilgrim up, and that gives us another option for what we give +1/+1 trample every turn. But I'm just gonna make one big, chunky, trample-y threat. Boom. If we end up wanting to kill a small enough creature with this Warbriar Blessing, then I guess we will still have an alternate option for the +1/+1. That is not a small creature, and Warbriar Blessing doesn't kill it unless the Wayfair thing works the way I want it to. Because I have the mana to Blessing and Apathy here, this could play really poorly for me if it goes wrong, but I think because we have the Apathy backup, we're in a good enough position to see if this can work the way we want it to. Oh wait, no we're not. Never mind, never mind. Never mind, I'm super dumb. Because I won't have enough power even if it does work out. I want to find a situation where I need the Wayfarer to give the buff before the Blessing happens, so that I know how that works in the future. Four power Trampler, we kill one of them, we don't lose the Herald. If I send in a 2/3 here, we kill a Temple Thief, but we lose the 2/3. I mean, I could just go full speed ahead, but then I don't have Blessing up. Just gonna keep Blessing up. Again and always. Forever and always. Anyways, what I was saying is I really want to be in a position where we need that Wayfarer buff to have the Warbriar Blessing fight be lethal so I can test it out. Double Lampet. So, I mean, they're definitely gaining a life off this War Leader. Ew. Okay, they only have one other card engraved right now, but War Leader's another one that they can 100% have because the Lampids can sack it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They will have the stuff to escape that, and then that just demolishes us. The 6/6 that rips a card out every time it attacks or anything. Okay, well, obviously I don't have a response. I have to discard a card here. Whoever comes back, we're so outie. Oh yeah, they can get the extra life drain off that too. That's super gross. Cool. I mean, not cool, but cool. They have 2 out of 5 cards. Again, they can sack all these to bring it back, but then they only have 1 blocker, so that's risky. Ooh. Double Blessing could be random lethal if they just don't block. For 1 more turn. Honestly, I think this is a fair position for our opponent to just not block, so I wouldn't even fault them on that if they do randomly die. Alright, they're not going to randomly die. Fair enough. Is this going to be sack the board, get a 6/6? I don't think that's actually that good for them, though, right? Because they'll be tapped out with the 6/6, and the 6/6 straight up just has to block our Nyx Herald. In which case, I Blessing and kill it. I mean, I guess if their last 2 cards in hand include a removal spell, then that can be good enough for them. Because then it's like, we're going to wipe their board, put them to 7, and then they just kill Nyx Herald next turn now that they've gotten rid of the Karametra's blessings thanks to the Kroxa. Forerunner's the draw. Actually, the Herald isn't... Well, yeah, no, it is. It is exactly big enough because of the blessing. It's going to be 4 power. It's not big enough to kill them if they don't block it, though. We pray they block and we can't actually send everybody in here. Oh, yeah. Wait, this might be how they get us if they don't block. And I have to discard a Forerunner or a Blessing. I probably cast this then, so they can't really declare the attack here. And even if they kill the Herald, now I have a different 5 power trampler to kill them with. Oh. There's a way for our opponent to come back here. It's certainly off the back of a premium mythic like Kroxa. But this is a lot of board for them to survive. Will be difficult for them to be able to afford to attack. Okay, they only have 2 blockers, so I don't think they can attack, so we get to keep the Blessing, so they're probably dead to Blessing. I can Grovenancer pre-combat as well for an extra point of damage spread out. Block 2 creatures so they can block here, and that'll be 5 damage on the non-blocked creatures. That's perfect. Yeah, this is overkill because of the trample as well. This is 4 damage. And here's 5, 6 damage. And we get to keep the Forerunner. Alright. Things got scary when Kroxa hit the board, but they had to sack their entire board to do it, so they still ended up with a low enough amount of blockers we could go wide in the end. And some solid draws in the end helped us as well. If we had flooded out from that point, they may have been able to stabilize off of their Kroxa play. So well played from our opponent. Actually very well played from them as well, because they played around top deck Blessing to not randomly die, but we still just hit slightly stronger cards, which is surprising, because they had a Kroxa, but our deck is pretty powerful too. We are at 4-0 now, heading into Game 5. Alright, here we are for Game 5. That is the curviest curve I think we've curved so far. I don't know if we've gone 1, 2, 3 yet. Probably. I know we've had turn 1 Wayfarer in at least one other game. Maybe just one other game. I don't know if I've gone the full curve out, though. We're playing against a green deck. It's going to be green-black. That's a really, really good deck at playing out a long game. Lots of escape cards in there and everything. Drop the Leon in here. I could just immediately trade Karametra's Blessing for this Horn Beetle, but I want to get my damage on board because I think this is going to be a matchup we need to outrace them because they're going to have a way better late game, and unfortunately, the discard spell from our opponent is going to put us wildly behind. We already top-decked an extra land, so we already have a little bit of flood here, and now they rip our only proactive spell out of our hand, and now we're literally out of spells once we Blessing the Horn Beetle. Yeah, that was super bad. Both of our draws this game have been land, and they've ripped out our best play. We need to draw action. The worst part is our opponent knows it too. Oof, yep. 3/3 Death Toucher, that is not action. We kept a 3-lander, right? I don't think we kept a 4-lander. We kept, yeah, the 1, 2, 3 curve. We kept Wayfarer, Leonin, Pilgrim, and we had the Blessing backup. So yeah, we've drawn 100% lands so far. Come on. Oh, man. At least our opponent hasn't been casting any spells. Maybe Leonin just gets there because they don't play a 4 toughness blocker and they don't want to trade Aerophant off. Nope, here comes removal. They just don't want to spend removal on a 3/1 maybe. No, it's neither. What are these cards? It's a mystery to you. You'll never know the secrets I hold. Oh yeah, they just didn't want to spend premium removal on the 3/1. Fair enough, but I have no more gas, so they do cash it in now. Oh, the Brawler as well for the 2-for-1. Six for 6 on land draws. Let's go, baby. And that's one of the biggest bombs in the format. I'm pretty sure that's even better than Helix. At least they're tapped out from saving it, but I don't have removal that's going to take this off the board fast enough for it to not use its ability here. Plus, I still just die to these two, so I guess it doesn't matter that much. But yeah, like, we want to exile that thing so that these don't spit out 1/1s when they die. Oh, if they just held on to that, I would be dead right now, because I was not going to chump. I would have just let it in, and then they would have 3-damaged me, and I'm dead. Well, I've got a chump block. They just have spells. I was gonna say they have too many spells, but it's really just that they have spells, period. almost impossible to win a game if your first 6 draws in a row are lands, and that's going to show us that. We drew 6 lands and then Pilgrim, Pilgrim. And that is not enough to win a game, so unwinnable game on that one. We are 4-1 heading into game 6. Well, we've only got one threat here, but we have great interaction. We have removal and the counterspell for our opponent's removal. I guess right now this is just a combat trick, because we don't have an enchanted or enchantment creature. But we have plenty of ways to turn this into the removal counter. Playing against blue-white, really excellent controlling color pair. We need to be as aggressive as possible in this kind of matchup to close out the game early, because if it goes long, they are going to have much better top decks in the late game, so really need an aggressive curve in this matchup, and unfortunately that is not the opening hand that we drew. So we're just not well positioned for this matchup. Okay, I don't remember our exact opening hand here. I think it might have been 2 lands, Wayfarer, Blessing, Apathy, so we might be on the literal all land draws twice in a row. But we might have top decked one of these Apathies. I don't recall. Hey, we hit a spell. Unfortunately, it's not an enchantment creature, which means it's probably going to get killed by their removal here. Hopefully at least it doesn't get exiled, so we might be able to escape it in the late game. Uh-oh. Lean will exile it when it dies. No removal. Okay, we are drawing spells. They didn't immediately kill the Typhon. We are in this game of Magic. We can cast our whole hand. Not if Auto Tapper wants to be a complete idiot, though. Why would you not hold up double white with 2 other white spells in hand? Is it trying to hold up Typhon Escape mana? I guess it is? I think I hit the Daxos here so we can exile their life gain, potentially. Gross. Alright, the hexproof trick would get us no matter where we target. I guess we could have played around Karametra's Blessing going for the non-enchantment creature, but because they had Starlit Mantle, they just demolish us either way. We don't even get the enchantment enter the battlefield effect, which is rough. That means Typhon doesn't get to attack as a 5/5 here. So I can attack as a 4/4, they double block. I only kill 1 creature unless I Blessing, in which case I trade Typhon and Blessing for their 2 creatures, which is pretty bad. Pretty bad because they would exile the Typhon on Leonин's death. Doesn't actually affect our current combat at all. Actually, it does. It does because of Wayfarer's ability. Unless they counter it, then it doesn't. But if it hits the board, then it matters. So I'm on board threatening to kill both their blockers. Cool. So they just take it. I thought they might have still went for the double block there, because then they would kill the Typhon and exile it from grave, in which case we could Blessing in response to the double block. But they just don't even want to go for an onboard 2-for-1 there. Okay, luckily Auto Tapper does it right on the Forerunner, at least, it looks like. Alright, so they had the counter spell. They didn't counter the Herald earlier. Save that for something better, and luckily for them, we top-decked something better. Not too much better than Nyx's Herald in this deck. Oh... 2 cards in hand. I don't think they have like instant speed combat tricks and stuff, or they would have just blocked Typhon last turn, so I don't hate sending the Herald in and seeing if they just live in fear and they don't block. They have one clear, like, good block here, which is, yeah, it's just throw an 0-4 in front of it and nothing happens. Even if they put the Daxos in front of their Herald, I don't think I would do anything. Better to keep the Blessing. Yep, we got to top deck an enchantment for something to change here, otherwise we're just staring at each other. Because I'm not gonna spend a Karametra's Blessing to kill a 0-4 defender. And if I do that, then we just end up staring at each other after that attack regardless. Not an enchantment. Yep, and 3/1s just don't get through the 3/4. Not a position I want to be in against blue-white, but I mean, so far so good. They don't seem to have drawn any win cons or anything. Heliod's Pilgrim's an enchantment. It might just be like 4 counters over there, sure. You got it. I'm just praying that this is not a pack one, pick one Dream Trawler kind of deck. If they hit a Dream Trawler at any point, the game's completely over. That's just what Dream Trawler does. Let's send a 4-power Nyx Herald, I think. Over a 5-power Typhon. Cool. Yeah, blessing for blessing it is. Dude, that's sad. A little annoying. That's basically Dream Trawler. I guess not quite. You can kill this one, but if you don't immediately kill this card, it spits out a tentacle and gets bigger every time they draw a card. So just by playing the game, this is eventually going to be like a 6-7, and they have like 4 1/1s out of it. So... and then we just lose to this, because we're already down 2 removal spells. We need to hit Calyx. And that's it. Calyx is the only removal left in the deck. No, Warbriar Blessing, but we would need to hit that really quick. So there's 2 outs in the next 21 cards. I still have no attacks here. I mean, I guess I drew a new Blessing, but I send in a 3-power creature, they block with a 0-4, and I don't cast Blessings, so... I guess I can just go wide and really hope for a bad block somewhere. Because if I just sit here, I'm now actively losing pretty quickly. There are a lot of spells they can have to save the Kraken here. If they have instant speed card draw, it'll do it. If they have the 4-mana counterspell that can counter anything, it'll do it. If they have instant speed removal, it'll do it. But our only hope is that this Kraken does not stick around. Sick. Then we have no hope. They even have the Daxos life gain just popping off alongside the Kraken. Just salt in the wound on that one, really. I could attack all three, pretending that I top-decked Karametra's Blessing. But if I top-decked Karametra's Blessing, I think this would be the same attack, and then I just Blessing when they block like this. Our opponent doesn't play around it. So I lose Nyx's Herald. Yeah, that attack might have been a little bold, because if they double block, they get to kill the 3/4, but it's at least way better than attacking with all three really bluffing there, because then they just kill Lean In with a Tentacle for free. I mean, I guess they killed my 3/4 with a Tentacle, so it's like the same difference. Doesn't matter. Don't block that I'm dead to Karametra's Blessing. Well, it's past the point of mattering, but we do just completely flood out in the end as well. Couple scripted losses in a row, sadly. The super devastating part, as always, being getting the undefeated streak into multiple losses in a row. Hurts bad, but I don't think we played particularly terribly there. I don't think there was anything we could do to turn either of those games around. My final blocks against the Kraken ended up being pretty loose, but that's about it. 4-2, heading into game number 7. Here we are for game 7 now. Curving out a tiny bit. 2-drop into 3-drop. We have 3 threats in the hand, which is great. Much better start than last round if our opponent is on a slower, grindier deck. We're in a much better position to actually put the pressure on them. Could really use another white source, though. I'm kind of thinking Pilgrim for Cetessan Training is what this hand wants. Interestingly enough, just because I'm so choked on white mana. It's gonna be... oh, God. This is one of the best rares in the format again. This is 3 mana 4/4, and they draw 2 cards and get a treasure. 3 mana for a 4/4 draw 2 plus treasure is pretty decent. So what do we do about it? They're a green deck, so even if I kill this token, they're still going to draw the 2, because they just play a 4 mana 4/4 next turn. I don't think I Apathy the token. I mean, I guess that makes it so if they don't have a 4 mana or less power 4 or greater creature in their hand, will stop the card draw. But that seems so unlikely against green. There's the 3 mana 4/1 at common and the 4 mana 4/4 at common. So there's tons of commons they can have to make sure they draw the cards next turn. So I think I'm putting the pressure on here with extra damage from Wayfarer to be able to just attack past the 1/1. I mean, I guess this is guaranteed going to be a 4/4 next turn, right? So I'm going to Apathy a 4/4 either way. Alright. I hate this, but here we are. If I don't Apathy it now, I'm just going to end up Apathying it next turn to get my attackers through. And this way, if they don't have another power 4 or greater creature, we can exile this so they don't draw 2, but yeah, there's just a million commons they could have there, so they have the power 4 or greater creature, and they're going to draw 2 no matter what we do. Still choked on that white mana here. training, hoping to top deck like exactly planes here. Wayfarer, training onto Pilgrim, draw a card. If we hit planes, we also get to play Leonin this turn, and even if we don't hit planes, that's 2 3-power attackers into the 4-3. I mean, it doesn't seem great unless we get super lucky, but none of our other lines seem great either. This is only like a little worse than our other lines if we don't top deck the land, and it's much better if we do. Okay. This gives us something to give the Herald buff to next turn, which is big. They are down to 7, like, we might cheese things out if we top deck like a combat trick or something. Well, so much for Herald doing anything. There goes our enchanted creature. That is not a white source or a combat trick. Play 2/2 drops and start trying to make this board state super wide just in case they somehow didn't top deck more creatures off of all their extra card draw. Suppose that's the best play, is to double up spells here. Oh, I'm dumb. I should have Grove Dancered instead, because if I Grove Dancered, I can make the Leonin 4 power, and the Beetle would be a 3/3 right now. Probably better to have a 3/1, a 2/2, a 1/2, and a 3/3 than 2 3/1s, a 1/2, and a 2/2. I guess it's not that different of a board state, because we still have a 3 power and a 2 power creature out. I don't think it mattered at all. If they had Warbriar Blessing here, then they would just Warbriar Blessing the Horn Beetle this turn. Okay. Yikes. Alright, well, started this game getting devastatingly 3-for-1'd by one of the best rares in the format, and that is the best way to set up for an easy late game recovery and stabilization. Now it looks like there's pretty much nothing we can do to turn this game around. Unless our opponent just hits every single land in their deck in a row. Arena's got jokes too. They have the Naturalize for the Apathy. This is such a bummer, honestly. There is no worse feeling in a draft than the undefeated run into multiple losses in a row. And I genuinely don't think there was anything we could do in any of these losses. Just get absolutely slammed by variance in multiple different ways here. I'm going to play it out here, but I'm going to do it pretty silently and pretty quickly, because I don't think anything matters from here. I'm just going to play kind of instinctually what I think are the best lines in this sort of position. rather than going into too much detail, because we're at like a 0.1% chance of victory anyway. We're just incapable of casting 2 spells in 1 turn because we can't find the second white. And at this point, the second white is really just flood. It's statistically pretty likely, though, because we've missed enough lands that I think like half our deck is lands at this point. Yeah, there it is. If we had double white, like, on curve there with all those threats, we only needed to find, like, 7 more damage this game, so maybe there was a tiny, tiny chance. Could have loaded all of the +1s into the Forerunner to try to kill, like, 1 blocker here. The problem is, even if I put every single buff that I have this turn on the Forerunner, it's a 9/7, which they block with a 5/6 and a 3/4, and I only kill 1 of their cards still. So I think we hold off at least 1 more turn here, and if they don't find removal or a creature again, then we are getting 2 unblocked creatures no matter what. So if we top deck like an absolute champion, it's big damage. Okay, now we lose no matter what, because Destiny Spinner provides them with another blocker. So it's 2 blockers off 1 card. It's 3 when they're completely untapped, because they basically pulled out every land in their deck off this Wanderer. Alright, they're going to use it on the offensive, though. Start slamming us with a forest. Keeping a bunch of blockers up. Yeah. I mean, again, the only play that we've had since they stabilized here was maybe throw in a really big Forerunner and clear out 1 of their big blockers. And that was last turn, and they just hit Destiny Spinner the second after I do that, even if I choose that line. Which means they still have infinite blockers, and it doesn't end up mattering. It doesn't end up being advantageous, I should say. Let's start milling myself, because I have 2 escape cards in this deck. But then I don't have the potential, like, top deck Clothis as an out or anything. Or not Clothis, that's their bomb rare. Top deck Calyx as an out. I just said Clothis because I saw it on the stack. Pretty sure our 0.1% is now 0%. We've now officially been double bombed. And they're playing real safe, so even if we do top deck Karametra's Blessing or something, it's not going to randomly find lethal. Mill myself for fun. Well, get rid of Flood. Yeah, get rid of all lands. Cool. They just have an indestructible blocker. They can stop 8 of our damage without even losing a creature. Or sorry, 6. Because we do have trample. They stop 6 of our damage without even losing the creature. Now they gain another 2 every turn. And we take another 2. They have a Typhon engraved to escape. Alright, I'm done. I'm done. That's enough. That game has not been winnable for quite some time, but just in case, I will play it out. 4-3 it is. Extremely disappointing ending here, honestly. I think this deck was pretty excellent, and it is always rough to lose all of your losses in a row, especially after a big win streak like that. I guess it's rough to 0-3 as well, or 1-3 or something, but it feels astronomically bad when you like get that great win streak and you're like 4-0 and then boom, 0-3, get out of here. But again, I don't think our losses were due to anything particularly bad about our deck or our gameplay. It was just some really rough variance there. Our first loss, we hit 6 lands in a row as our first 6 draws of the game, so we just couldn't play any spells. That can happen to any deck. Our second loss, we kept a slower start, so maybe the only thing that could have went different is in that second loss, had I mulliganed into a more aggressive hand, we may have stood more of a chance there. But without any information on what our opponent is playing, I think our keep was reasonable for our second loss there. Because if we ended up against like another slightly more aggressive deck or a deck that doesn't have as powerful late game control-y stuff, we could have a reasonable matchup there with our more removal spell heavy dirtily start. But obviously it just didn't pan out well. We kept one of our slowest hands against one of our slowest opponents, and they got to draw into their bomb and take over the late game on that. And then our third loss, we just got Grand Slam comboed by bombs, which, again, can happen to any deck. It is what it is. I really enjoyed this deck. I think it was quite powerful. I think it was a great showing of what the green-white archetypes can do when you want to lean on the more aggressive end of the spectrum. And yeah, I am pretty happy with the deck we ended up with. Sad that it doesn't get the like maximum results or anything. So the postmortem on this draft is that I think we drafted pretty well, ended up with a pretty excellent deck. You just cannot win them all. Sometimes you are going to get hit by some stronger spells and some weaker draws. Maybe hit the 6 lands in a row, maybe hit the bomb decks from your opponent. 4-3 is going to be the end record for this deck. But that is going to end today's video. As always, I'd like to thank my patrons and YouTube members for their support, as well as you for watching the video. If you enjoyed this video and are interested in seeing more, you can always like, comment, and subscribe to tell the YouTube algorithm to send you some more in your recommended feed. If you'd like to catch me live, you can check out the Twitch channel in the link in the description below. And if you'd like to support the channel directly, you can check out the Patreon link in the description below. But other than that, as always, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you again soon for some more Magic Arena.